Welcome to AIM Services Cybersecurity Awareness webinar. We're going to start having some of these webinars more regularly to help inform and share information with small businesses and doctors' offices. A little bit about AIM Services. We've been around since 1996. Been providing affordable technology solutions to healthcare practices of all sizes, everything from the 1 to 2 user, one doc to larger organizations. Our staff is required to complete annual HIPAA, cybersecurity, and other assorted technical training to ensure compliancy and proficiency. AIM has around 20 years experience of hosting, which gives us a deeper dive into the actual security and infrastructure layers that most small businesses and small practices don't have, a firm grasp on. We work with many VARs and partners, vendors, and even government clients. AIM has a heavy emphasis on the cybersecurity and helping other businesses protect their data and their investments in their business. This includes healthcare providers with protecting their patients' health information, as well as their practice and business in general. AIM partners with many of the industry's leaders in products and services. So everything that that we align ourselves with are industry-leading partners for our hosting side. Sometimes that doesn't translate down to the individual practices themselves, because a lot of the solutions that we require for the hosting are enterprise-level solutions. But we work with a lot of small businesses and have done a lot of research and have found a good fit for tools that better meet your needs. More about AIM Services. The principals and founders are Don Harmeyer, Diane Harmeyer, and then myself. Like I said, would we start this 26 years ago? Or 23 years ago, sorry. The purpose of our webinars that we're going to be doing is cybercrime is at an all-time high, and hackers are setting their sights on small and medium-sized businesses who are low-hanging fruit. Don't be their next victim. There's nothing worse than taking calls from a doctor's office that is about to go under because all of their data is locked up. They don't have a backup. They don't have any way to recover. This report reveals the most common ways that hackers get in and how to protect yourself today. That's what the focus of today's webinar is going to be. You, the CEO and or manager, practice manager, business manager of these small businesses are under attack. Right now, extremely dangerous and well-funded cybercrime rings in China, Russia, and the Ukraine are using sophisticated software systems to hack into thousands of small businesses, just like yours, and steal credit cards, client information, swindle money directly out of your bank account, and some are even being funded by their governments. There are actually Russian groups right now that are demonstrating how they can hack and crack the remote desktop protocol that we'll go into later in 30 seconds or less. Next, you don't think that you're in danger because you're small and not like the big targets like JP Morgan, Home Depot, Sony, Target, and LabCorp. Think again. 82,000 new malware threats are being released every single day, and half of the cyber attacks occurring are aimed very specifically at small businesses. Some of this data that we're going to be going over is actually old at this point. Because of the ever-changing landscape of this, there is a huge target on the small doctors' offices in particular. Everyone out there thinks this isn't going to happen to me. That's something that I hear about, but it's never going to happen to me. It's never going to happen to our business. In reality, how many people have said that about tornadoes, fires, floods, hurricanes, all of the natural disasters that are out there, as well as accidentally deleting data? The ransomware epidemic is in full-blown effect for the entire globe right now. The number of small businesses with 1 to 5 employees are being targeted at a highly significant rate than those that have 6 or more employees. But everyone thinks that they're always going after the large targets. What's happened is they figured out that the larger businesses with more employees have more money to spend on securing their networks, and they take it more seriously. Whereas the 1 to 5 user offices, they don't take it as seriously, and they don't spend the money that they need to secure their networks and train their people. Unfortunately, 26% of these that were attacked the first time have been attacked again. This chart, at first, one of our employees actually joked that it looked like a transit system or a train line. The key thing to note here, we don't need to go into specifics, but each one of these is different types of malware threads, different types of viruses, malware, tools that ransomwares. And as you see, the trend, it's like a wildfire. From 2013 to 2015, it started getting more and more out of control. But then between 2016 to 2017, and we don't even have the data for some of 2018 yet. We're going to try and get some update slides for 2018 and 2019, but I guarantee you, from the trends that we've seen and the number of calls that we have had from doctors' offices and partners, we have relationships with several VARs that we've been brought in on to help and assist them with either the forensics or recovering or starting to host for these practices once they get a good set of their data backed up. Most people are really aware of the significant loss and the issue with losing the data or the device, but the number one issue for small businesses that's threatening whether or not they stay in business and keep their doors open or not is actually the downtime it takes to recover from these ransomware attacks. Some basic statistics. 82,000 new malware threats are being released every single day, and half of the cyber attacks occurring are aimed at small businesses. I would argue that some of this data is kind of dated, and that it would be well more, a lot more than half at this point. The National CyberSecurity Alliance reports that 1 in 5 small businesses have been victims of cybercrime in the last year, and that number is growing rapidly as more businesses utilize cloud computing, mobile devices, and store information online. Which for the healthcare, we've had to have an internet presence in order to file claims for many years now. You've had to do certain things where the only way to actually protect yourself 100% is to be completely unplugged and not have any systems touch the internet. Even then, you still run the risk of somebody bringing in a USB drive, a USB thumb drive, any type of threat like that that could also still negatively impact your business. Out of all of this small business, and that's what the SMB is, it's small to mid-sized businesses. If you're not familiar with that term, get get familiar with that term, because the SMBs, whenever there are alerts released, please pay attention to them. We're in a state of emergency now where you can no longer ignore these type of threats and think that they aren't going to happen to you. That's part of the reason we're doing these free webinars, and we're, you know, our competitors, we're doing webinars for each other. We're all out here trying to just get the word spread that, look, you have to pay attention at this point and be diligent in protecting your network and your data. The fastest growing sector of the US economy is the healthcare sector, and they happen to be the highest vulnerability to cyber threats. Most of the reason for that is because they are the softest target. They tend to spend less money on their infrastructure and resources and education. It's pretty common knowledge out there as well. There are lots of reports about the number and the rate at which practices are now failing audits from either the OCR or CMS audits. And most providers are not investing the time, money, resources that are necessary in protecting their infrastructure. And it's not just providers, it's all small businesses. Even with our own business, there are times that, you know, we need to look at getting a next level device or getting, you know, new software. And, you know, especially with our hosting, those numbers oftentimes are upwards of $30,000 to $50,000 to $60,000, real quick and easy. So those are huge costs that initially you want to put off, but there are areas and things that we've had to invest in. Because of all of this, it is absolutely critical that you protect your business from these. In this webinar, we're going to go over 10 ways that hackers get into your systems. There are many, many more, but for this webinar, we're going to go ahead and keep it to these that they've listed as 10 of the top ways that hackers gain access. One is, and this is probably the most common, they simply take advantage of poorly trained employees. The number one vulnerability for business networks are the employees and management as well, to simply the users using them. It's extremely common for an employee to infect an entire network by opening and clicking on a phishing email. Phishing email is an email that is clearly and cleverly, I'm sorry, not clearly, it's cleverly designed not to look like a threat. So it's designed to look like a legitimate email from a website or vendor that they actually trust. These phishing, and they call them spear phishing emails when they're even more specifically targeting individuals. We'll go into a little bit more of that. If they don't know how to spot the infected emails or online scams, they could compromise your entire network. This is just one example of many that we get. Unfortunately, we have a really good email filter in place that does not allow through those that are obvious threats or that have malicious software attached to them. They get stopped in our email appliance, and I can't even get to them to show them as an example. I'll have to try and do that with a side email on a test system at some point. But here's one that got through real quick and easy. And the thing you need to note, this one happens to have the actual URL or domain name of the place that they're sending you. Oftentimes, though, you'll see it from, and it could even be from yourself or from someone that you know. But whenever you hover over it, it's not actually from them. It's from a different location or from a different person or a different email. Also, as you start to go through, the email and you read it, what they're trying to be clever about is a call to action. They're trying to prompt your emotions to click on this email. They're going to, in this one, it's the threat of a subpoena or a judgment. And you can click here to see those, get a link to those. Unfortunately, whenever you go to this website, you're going to be infected with a malware. So you need to, at this point, the training used to be that hover over it, and if it looks like a legitimate site, then you could go to that link. At this point, the way we're training people is don't go to the link here. If this says it's from Home Depot and the order for your refrigerator or whatever has been delayed, and you're like, well, I didn't even order a refrigerator, don't click on the link here. Go to Home Depot, the homedepot.com official site, and log on from there. That way you can save yourself the headaches of whether or not it was legitimate or not from the email itself. Many of the banking emails are even instructing their clients to go directly to the websites and log on from there as well. So there are ways that you can detect and identify some of these emails. Next, they exploit device usage outside of company business. And what this means is that you have employees going to sites and using software and different things that they're doing on the PCs, on the workstations, that they shouldn't be. Or they're directly connected, if they're a remote user. Some offices have them directly connect to a server, and sometimes they're surfing the web from those actual servers. So you must have an acceptable use policy that outlines how employees are permitted to use the company-owned PCs, devices, software, and internet access in general, as well as email. And I stress the internet access because even if they bring in their own personal device, if they are surfing the web and they are connected to your internal network, your local area network, and they become infected, they could potentially infect the rest of your network. So you need to go ahead and cut off that access. If you're going to allow that type of stuff, then you need to set up a guest network. That way, for your personal access, say the doctor or the nurses or whoever wants or needs, because they're up there countless hours, if they need to do that type of stuff on their breaks or whatever, have a guest network that they are connecting to, rather than your actual internal network that has all of your business data and information and patient health information. Further, you have to enforce these policies with properly configured content filtering software and firewalls. Once again, that goes back to setting up a guest network, having proper configuration and policies and everything in place to where this type of stuff is not allowed on your business network. This is actually a law as well. You guys have to have policies and procedures in place that must be updated regularly, and you must show that these policies and procedures are also being followed and enforced. Next, they take advantage of weak password policies. We see this quite often. We actually years ago had a practice that talked one of our technicians into allowing the doctor to set his own password, and he was having some issues logging on as rapidly as he would like. So he had our technician show him where he could change some of those settings, and unbeknownst to us, he set those requirements so low that he just basically had like a 1, 2, 3, 4 password. It was literally that generic and simplistic that they ended up getting hacked. We were able to determine that it was actually through that account. Luckily, we had great backups and they were up and running in no time. But that's where you could have some extreme issues. Passwords should contain at least 8 characters, at least 1 lowercase letter, at least 1 uppercase letter, like, you know, a symbol, you know, your exclamation point, at, pound sign, whatever, some type of special character, and then at least 1 number. Need a combination of all of those. On cell phones, a lot of people were allowing cell phones to connect to their Wi-Fi. You need to have passcodes set on their phones. Even anyone that connects to your network, you need to have some type of password. Also, on doctors and nurses' cell phones, or anyone who accesses email from the business, or that have links back to connecting to a portal or any of those type of services, you must have some type of password on your phone, and ideally the facial recognition and or some type of biometrics, thumbprint, or a complex password. This can all be enforced by a network administrator for your business network. Next, they attack networks that are not properly patched with the latest security updates. New vulnerabilities are frequently found in operating systems, as well as common software programs that are being used, such as Microsoft Office, Adobe, Flash, all of these different programs and utilities that you end up having to load on your systems to do certain things. You have to make certain that your operating systems themselves are not falling behind on software patches and updates, and you have to make sure that all of these other products that you have running on your workstations and servers are staying up to date with their patches and updates. It's no longer a scenario where you can let that go for 6 months like in the past. These type of updates are near daily. If you are under a managed IT plan, this can all be automated. We are urging any of you that have current IT in place to work with them to make sure that you have as much of this managed and monitored as possible. If you don't have current IT, work with someone like us, our partners, our competitors. We don't care. You just have to get your networks and your systems up to date, stay up to date, and patched and secure. Once you get infected, oftentimes that leads to other infections around you from other trusted vendors, partners, colleagues, so forth. All right, next. It is very common for them to attack networks that have no backups or simple single location backups. Once again, we're back to this very small doctor's offices. Most of them are running the old school backups. Surely nobody is still doing tape backups or running to any type of disk, but there are still a lot of practices out there that are using USB thumb drives or USB drives or even NAS drives that are connected to the network and have network shares. And that's how your system is backing up to them. Unfortunately, these ransomware attacks are taking advantage of that. They are not only locking and encrypting the data on the servers, they are reaching out to any shares that they can see and encrypting and locking that data as well. I can think of, there are at least half a dozen instances that I am aware of from different partners that have called in the last 2 months. Yeah, I'd say the last 2, possibly 3 months this year for certain, that not only had their servers locked and encrypted, but their backups and all of their backups. So they ended up having to pay the ransom. Good backup, a good tested, truly good backup will help save you from this headache. It'll also help you against scenarios where an employee or someone accidentally or intentionally, if it's a disgruntled employee, deletes or overwrites files. It'll also help you if natural disasters, fire, water damage, all of these different scenarios, hardware failures, host of other data erasing disasters. You've got to have a good backup. Your backup should also be automated and monitored. The worst time to find out that your backup does not work is when you desperately need it. And unfortunately, most practices do not have backup systems, which what we're using now, instead of the just backup and disaster recovery type plans, you must start moving towards business continuity and disaster recovery, where you're not just doing a daily backup. Losing a whole day of data is extremely time consuming. Worse, if you lose an entire system, what most people don't realize is the time that it takes to actually restore that data. So if you lose your server, it's going to likely take many hours to several days to recover. Most backups now, the next generation backups that you need to be looking into, will be hourly, and they will check for these different types of events. They will check for ransomware. They will notify you that if you've got a ransomware. They will notify you if there's an anomaly, like a lot of files missing, or a lot of files that are current, that are recently created, or changes in those files. Any of these signatures that would indicate to the software, to the backup software, that something has changed and you need to look into it. That's what you need to have in place. This is a slide that includes of one of the crypto lockers, and this was taken from a client that that system was locked, and this is the screen that came up on their server. I'm not familiar with whether or not this one had to pay or not, but this, it clearly shows you that this is what happened. They lay it out, and here's how you can pay. And they typically want you to pay in Bitcoin because it's untraceable. Next, the cyber criminals are exploiting networks with employee installed software. This one's kind of been out there for a while. Really kind of came along with the streaming music and just more internet usage inside the office. The fastest way cyber criminals access networks is by duping unsuspected users to willfully download malicious software. They typically embed it within downloadable files such as games or other innocent-looking apps. Free music. We've seen it many times where people watch either movies or TV shows or different things like that, it's typically the ones that are free that they allow advertising agencies to do the pop-up ads and everything. Well, some of those advertising agencies aren't actually ads. They're malware delivery systems. So need to stop allowing that. Put policies and procedures and everything in place where that's not allowed. You can do that by configuring with your firewall, but it must include employee training and monitoring. Cannot stress this enough. Even if you were to go to any IT company out there and you bought all of the tools that they had, if you do not include the employee training and monitoring, you're going to fail, because it is that important. There are very sophisticated ways that these cyber criminals are getting around these preventative services and exploiting your employees. They attack inadequate firewalls. A firewall acts as the frontline defense against hackers. Basically, a firewall is configured to block certain types of traffic, certain types of requests that are coming in from the network. The examples I have here are port 80 for, you're always hearing about websites and portals and those type of things that are getting hacked. Happens all the time. It's these guys have figured this stuff out. So you never want these public-facing websites and portals to be inside your network. They need to be in a DMZ, which is a demilitarized zone. It's a different area, a segmented out area of your network that is has a barrier between it and your local area network where your server and your workstations and all reside. The number one threat that I've seen out there right now that is sweeping the nation and sweeping the world is this port 3389. For years, that used to be the way that if you had remote users, if you had remote offices, going to your router or your firewall and enabling port forwarding for port 3389 to a server that was listening for that traffic for a remote desktop connection or to their workstation. There are Russian hackers, I'm going to reiterate it again, there are Russian hackers out there right now that have perfected this and can show you in 30 seconds or less how they can brute force even with strong passwords. They have a method and a routine that they run that will keep asking and requesting traffic to that remote, that system that is listening for traffic of 3389 or remote desktop type traffic until it finally gives up and allows them through. That's what they call a brute force attack. So no longer can you do that type of thing. We've got, there are products and ways to do that, but you cannot do it with port forwarding 3389 at this point. We've stopped allowing it, period. There are some practices out there that have fought some of, not ours, but one of our partners was telling me this past week that they had 2 or 3 businesses that were fighting them on that, and they just said, hey, look, we have to disable it, period. If you choose to turn it back on later, that's on you, but we, at this point, we have to disable it, and then the rest is on you. Firewalls, they need to be monitored, and they have to have routine maintenance. We are long past the days of just putting up a firewall or a router in the closet and leaving it be and never doing the firmware and updates and maintenance that it needs to have. We also need to be regularly looking to see if we need to update or upgrade those firewalls. Next generation firewalls are required these days if you are a healthcare provider. You can't have that cheap Walmart or Target or Best Buy type firewall in your office anymore. Those are meant for home and consumer use. You are a business that is held to a higher standard. You are legally required to put business level and quality equipment and services into your infrastructure. Number 8, they attack devices when you're off the office network. Say your laptops, your mobile devices, your phones, your tablets, whatever. It is not uncommon for hackers to be set up in these public areas and to clone or essentially set up a Wi-Fi that allows you to connect that looks just like Starbucks or something like that, but they're not legitimate. They are monitoring and capturing your data as you are typing it in, because you're connecting through their network. They can monitor every bit of that. So if you're going to connect in public places, you need to get with the place itself, the business itself, and make certain that you are connected to their Wi-Fi, and that that they're making one that's safe and available to you, and it's theirs. Make sure of that Wi-Fi name. Before connecting, that's once again just stating to check with them. Never access financial or medical or any other sensitive data while you're on the public network. That really includes even if you're Starbucks, or if, because anyone else on that Wi-Fi could be employing some type of software monitoring that could steal this type of information. Don't shop online whenever you're at these public places and using the public Wi-Fi. This might look like a duplicate slide because we touched upon the employees learning about phishing emails, and I showed you one example. But they are using the phishing emails to fool you into thinking that you are visiting a legitimate website. Once again, a phishing email is a bogus email that is carefully designed to look like a legitimate request or attached file from a site you trust, and in order to have you willingly give up your login information in a particular website, or to click on and download a virus. Oftentimes these emails look 100% legitimate. They're going and they're copying the exact website. It looks exactly like the website oftentimes. And they can show up in a form of a PDF. A lot of your email appliances will catch some of the PDFs, but I'm going to show you an example of one that is not an infected PDF or not an infected file that will get through most email appliances. It'll look like a UPS or a FedEx tracking number, a bank letter, some type of Facebook alert, bank notification, Apple or Amazon receipts. That's what makes these so dangerous, is that they look exactly like legitimate emails. At first. Here's an example of one that we got. This was ironically right after we upgraded some of the iPhones in our business. We get this email to one of our staff that thank you for the purchase through the Apple Store. Now, any of you that are familiar with Apple, this doesn't look like a typical Apple email to start with. But if you're new to Apple, then you don't know to look for some of this stuff. First, this is not from Apple. This is App Store-orderweb.com. That's the first thing to look for. Next is the email that it was sent to. Was this individual's extremely old email address that hasn't been used in 10 years? We just simply monitor it for a couple of accounts that may access it. So that was an indicator. Next page. And the only reason I did this, I did this on an isolated system where we'd already scanned this PDF to make sure that this PDF was clean. I don't have any examples of PDFs that are infected because we have an email appliance that doesn't allow them through. But here's the email, or here's the PDF, I mean. It says, thank you for purchasing an order. What they're doing is they're pushing your emotions like they did with this individual. Hey, I did not order a game. I didn't buy anything. Why am I getting this invoice? I'm going to go cancel or manage the subscription and delete it, or view it to see what happened or who ordered it. Problem is, if you were to hover over any of these links, I don't think it's showing up really good here, but you'll see that of course it does not take you to apple.com in any way, shape, or form. Instead, it's going to take you to this malicious website here. It's going to download infected software or malicious software. Here is an example. If we looked at these two, of course, that's not Apple. This is an actual Apple receipt. And that's what we did is we had a little training session that day with our personnel to make sure that they were up to speed on what an Apple receipt looks like. And the typical thing is you'll notice that most of these don't have links on them anymore to connect. And if they do, you can hover over them and see that it very specifically says apple.com. Next, they use social engineering to pretend to be you. Hackers pretend to be you to reset your passwords. They are out there and they are mining data on each and every one of us. Our data is public to everyone out there, and it is very easy, depending on how much data you have out there and how much personal information you have out there, for someone to call. This was a larger example. They called into Coca-Cola's and posed as the CEO, persuading one of the other execs to open an email with a software that ended up infiltrating the network just by posing as the CEO. Ruined the surprise there. Another scenario, the hackers pretended to be a popular online blogger, and they actually got Apple to reset the author's iCloud password. Cyber criminals are actively mining all of this sensitive data that is inadvertently uploaded in users' social media posts and pictures. We're in this society now where we want to tell people that we're going on a vacation. We want to tell people that, hey, here's my kids. Here's pictures of me at work. Here's pictures of my kids. This is my new granddaughter, Annabelle. This is, whatever. We've got phone numbers so that people can contact us. We've got our email addresses out there and pictures. Don't know how many of you guys are familiar with, I don't remember his name at this point, but this is the guy, and this is the operations center in Hawaii that, if you remember back a year or two ago, the false alarm with the tsunami alerts that alerted the entire Hawaii, state of Hawaii, of an imminent threat of tsunami. Well, this network operating center could not figure out why that alert would go out. None of the sensors were actually indicating anything. What it ended up being was, this is a blown up screen here, but if you look along the bottom here, at the bottom of this guy's monitors, he was simply taking a picture for Facebook that was uploaded to his Facebook account or social media account, and it actually had his username and password to the system. So you cannot do this. Cannot have these systems done, these stickies under a keyboard done to your monitor. And Realistically, at this point in time, I would not allow pictures to be taken inside of an office. There could inadvertently be some patient health information back here that is exposed once someone blows that up and magnifies the screen. I need to pick up the pace, I can tell. Here are some other examples of some of the ransomware out there. San Francisco, their transit system was hit by ransomware, and their network engineers and IT department decided, look, we're not going to pay this $73,000 ransom. We've got good backups, and we know how to recover from this. And it's the end of the week, it's the weekend, so we've got time. So they elected not to pay the $73,000 ransom. However, they didn't have a continuity solution. Their backup solution took 2 days, or had them down for 2 days trying to restore. They thought, okay, it's a Friday and Saturday, it's a little less traffic on those days. But even with it only being a Friday and Saturday, there were 735,000 rides that they had to offer for free. And at $2.25 per ride, it was a $3.3 million loss to save the 73,000. Now, nothing guarantees that you give them that 73,000 and they're going to actually unencrypt it, but you know, it's still it's a gamble. Next example is a hospital in where's this? Indiana. Yeah. So Indiana, this hospital, they had a $55,000 ransom, and despite having good backups, they opted to pay the ransom because it was far less downtime for them to do that. So they paid the ransom of $55,000. All right. You've got to get help ensuring that your company is truly making every effort to protect your network, data, and business. Even with our technical expertise on our hosting and our IT department, we are working with other partners to make certain that we have every T crossed, every I dotted. You've got to be diligent and work with people who are living and breathing this stuff daily. And that's not what you have time to do. You need to be making money with your business. I believe most people on here are medical, providing healthcare. You must have network security and business continuity and disaster recovery audits performed to even know where to begin. If you aren't doing these audits, first off, you're in violation of HIPAA. You are legally required to have network and security audits done at least annually, along with a business continuity and disaster recovery or backup and disaster recovery audit and policies and procedures in place. Is your network really and truly secured against most devious cyber criminals? I'm getting an alert that I'm going to need to go ahead and go past this one here. You know, all of these points, we're going to share these slides afterwards, but you've got to take note of all of these different things. There's so many different facets. You go ahead and skip to this slide and concentrate on it a little bit more. You've got to have regularly scheduled business reviews that include training, coaching, testing, and documentation. You need to work with some IT sources to provide this type of stuff. You've got to have the security and risk assessments done. It's legally required, but you need to do it for your own sake so that you know where you stand as well. The penetration testing, remediation plans with policies and procedures. These are all things that companies like ours, and where we're partnering with other companies to make sure that each and every one of these individual things is very, very specifically addressed. Real-time network and security monitoring with virus, malware, ransomware protection. Dark web monitoring for email and IP addresses. Once again, the business continuity and disaster recovery solutions. We have solutions that cannot be infected by ransomware, at least no known ransomware at this time. They have a read-only copy. They are encrypted. There is both a local and a cloud copy. These things monitor, and even better, the recovery from these backup and business continuity and disaster recovery solutions now, these next generation ones, you recover about the amount of time that it takes you to restart a server. Basically, you connect to it, tell it to spin up a copy, down your actual server, or if your server is completely dead, tell this virtual, it will spin up a virtual copy of your server. The other nice thing about that is that with most other business continuity or backup and disaster recovery solutions, it is extremely difficult to really be able to tell, can you recover? Can you recover from a full system failure? You can't tell that unless you actually restore the data. With this device, you can turn that server off, or you can keep it running so that most of your business is still running on it, but have it spin up in a virtual environment and actually prove that you can connect to it and see actual current data. This is imperative for audits as well. You can quickly and easily show that you are applying your business continuity and disaster recovery. HIPAA compliancy training, cloud hosting, current and new refurbished workstations, managed network and power equipment. This stuff has got to be managed where you have essentially a network operating center that is actively monitoring and watching for any type of alerts. Email and content filtering, E&O insurance. That's extremely important these days. I'm going to skip these. Where am I at? Slide. It's changed on me. Okay, summary. Sorry, I know some of this I probably should have gone a little faster. Small to mid-sized businesses, particularly in the healthcare, are being targeted at an extremely alarming rate. There is simply no way to completely be risk-free. You have to better understand, mitigate, and reduce the evolving risk as much as possible. Most providers either believe that they have proper security policies and procedures and measures in place, and they don't. There's a disconnect between MSPs and ITs. MSPs, managed service providers. There it is, even with this conversation. Oftentimes, IT guys talk in a lot of jargon. We've got to be able to talk the same language and talk in layman's terms on how to better protect and educate the doctor's offices. Providers are simply overwhelmed with all the regulatory requirements out there. Between the OCR and CMS audits and the MIPS and different incentives and the carrot and the stick and all of the different things going out there in the regulatory area, that doctors are doing their best just to keep their heads above water. Providers are simply overwhelmed. That's what I was talking about. Too often the conversation is about selling versus educating and securing and protecting. Look, we don't care who you buy it from. You just need to take some action and get your network secure. The conversation must be straightforward and easy to understand. While it's no secret, I've already alluded to that fact. We are offering these managed security services at this time, but it's imperative that the small businesses, and particularly healthcare providers, become better educated and informed. Attend these type of webinars. Whether it's our webinars, whether it's our competitors, Just get informed. You have to be informed or you will become a victim. Our goal's never been to be a heavy sales organization. Look, here's what we offer. Here's how we can help. If we can help and it's a good fit, great. If we can't, we can refer you to someone else. We're not here to take if you have an IT department, we're not here to take your IT department's jobs. There's no reason for them to feel threatened. If you're working with a third party IT group, that's fine. We work with all types of groups. Our mission is to better enable them and you to protect your network, your patients' information, and ultimately your business. If you were hit by some of this, it is very likely that if you do not have these policies and procedures in place, you do not have a good business continuity and disaster recovery policy and solution in place, you will likely go under, because there are going to be fines. Any incentives that you that you were given by the government will likely have to be paid back. I already said the fines, the humiliation, and the embarrassment of being put on the websites. You have to publicly advertise that you were the victim if it's over a certain number of patients' records. Not to mention the downtime. The downtime is extremely important. You have to have a business continuity and disaster recovery solution in place to quickly get back on your feet and get back to making money. You are legally required to be informed, take action, and provide healthcare. If you provide healthcare services in any capacity, nobody is exempt. I heard just last week a nonprofit group trying to say that, well, we don't charge anything. This is a free service to our patients. It does not matter. That it is very clear. If you provide healthcare services, you must adhere to these rules and regulations. There are many states that are now implementing even stronger regulations, and it really does not matter if you, the provider, are practicing in that state. Many of these states are trying to take action if one of their state's citizens are part of a breach with a provider or a healthcare system in another state. Anyways, I apologize for having to rush there towards the end. We didn't get to do as many practice runs as we wanted. I hope this was very informative. If you have any questions, please forward those to us. I think at the very beginning, I had our information. So if you have any questions, any suggestions for additional webinars, please don't hesitate to get with us. We are offering many of these type of services now. We are offering these network and security assessments. That is the base part that you need to start at, because it helps you identify and uncover where your gaps and your holes are that you need to address. So please get informed and get with somebody to close as many of those gaps as possible. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.